One of the great luxuries that a franchise like Terminator allows you is you can simply just cast the best actor for the role. So we have a massive international cast. Kyle Reese and John Connor are both from Australia. Sarah's from the UK. Dio's actually from Africa. J.K. Simmons will walk around saying he's the lone American in the movie. If one of those guys happened to be American, they still would have gotten the job, but it just wasn't who the best person for the role was.
The whole cast has been easy. It's we all get on, and a lot of that is, back to Arnold. We've got a guy there that, we're all here because of. Terminator worked largely because of Jim Cameron and his story, but Arnold was just it was just brilliant casting.
You can't do a Terminator without Arnold. You just can't. He's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of all of the movies.
There's that poster of him with a gun, and to me, it's so iconic, and he became such an icon in the part. So, I think we're very lucky to have him as part of our story.
The first time I met Arnold, we were doing a table read with most of the cast and all the producers, the big giant square table, and we're chatting and getting to know each other. Arnold came in and sat down. Obviously, he's a big guy physically, but he walks into a room and he just brings a presence and a charisma with him that's undeniable.
Old, but not obsolete.
It was pretty special for me at the table read when we were hearing the script out loud for the first time, and he said some very famous words.
I'll be back.
That was one of those moments where it was just like, shit, yep, there it is. There they are. Perhaps three of the most, iconic words in cinematic history.
I mean, I had to get him the other day to do Sarah Connor, because just the way he does it, it's just so funny.
I'm back. To me, Terminator has been an extremely important franchise because I remember when I did the first Terminator, it was really the first action movie where I didn't have to take off my clothes. I mean, I did take it off just for a few minutes, but the rest of the movie was with clothes. It was like with my leather pants on, or jeans, or leather jacket and T-shirt and all this, and the body was not the most important thing because the machine actually was the most important thing. So to me, this was an important breakthrough in my career because everyone thought that I can only do Hercules movies or to do Conan type of movies, where you need a little iron cloth and flex your muscles, and that was it. So here was the first movie where I, kind of did the movie all the way through with clothes on, and where it was acting, and where I was not only playing a hero like I did in the past, but I played a villain. But a villain that was kind of heroic, so it was kind of a mishmash of different things. It was really terrific and a great breakthrough for my career. After that came Commando and Red Heat and Predator and True Lies and all of those kind of things. The rest, of course, is history.
One of the first people we cast, besides Arnold, was Emilia as Sarah. And the nice thing for me was I had a history with her in Game of Thrones. When I came to the project, Skydance was already very excited about her in the role.
Look, everybody in our world is a Game of Thrones fan. So saying, hey, what about Emilia Clarke? It wasn't much of a stretch.
And action.
Look, it's obvious. She's beautiful, but she's also a badass. And that's an interesting but also difficult combination to find in an actress.
How is he?
Still breathing.
Good. And you should be able to mate with Kyle Reese in this timeline.
Oh, okay, we're not having this conversation again.
We had to run a casting process as you always do, and it was really, really simple. She came in and read, and everybody looked at it and was like, that's it, that's Sarah. Her dedication to this role, the emotional depths, the charm, the humor, but also just the incredible strength. It makes her a very different Sarah Connor than we've seen, but she's absolutely fantastic in this movie.
My brother made me watch, made me watch Terminator far too young. I just kind of fell in love with it, and it was always something that I wasn't meant to watch, so there was this kind of excitement surrounding it. Like, you're not gonna say no to Sarah Connor. You know what I mean? You're just not. She's such an incredible icon for women everywhere, and just an opportunity to play such a fierce, strong warrior and put a new spin on it like we have was just incredible and incredibly exciting.
I didn't know she's that famous when I first met her, but a lot of my Korean friends text me from Korea, please take some picture with her. So I didn't ask her yet, but today I finally asked her and she said, yeah.
And then we set about trying to find Kyle Reese, and chemistry was a huge part of it.
I think there was a temptation to go out and find a Michael Biehn and say, let's do that again. Because it was like Linda Hamilton, he so nailed what he had to do in the first movie. But after a while, as you work on the material, this is a different take on the character. We're exploring different things, and we then just set out to find the best guy for the role.
I had the privilege of working with Jai a couple years ago on Jack Reacher, which is a movie we did with Tom Cruise, where he played a very different character. He played the villain of the film.
This is insane. All of it. This is not the mission.
Yeah, well,
We really actually ran a completely open casting process. Jai came in, and we actually questioned a little bit, does he have the range to play such a drastically different character? And he came in and tested with Emilia, and I remember me and Dana and Alan, we all looked at ourselves and went, that's Kyle. Just, he was simply the best actor for the job.
You die, all right?
What?
You die, that's what happens.
I went back and watched the first two films, definitely, more of just for a reference point, but I didn't place an enormous amount of emphasis on trying to draw from the performance of Michael Biehn or anything like that. It was just, he's the character, that's great, let's enjoy the narrative. It's just fun to kind of look back and think of what the mission was when we saw it once upon a time. And so, with shifting that, it's interesting to kind of just play a different side of it.
The main reason I decided to do this movie was because my 12-year-old daughter is in love with Jai Courtney. And I said, okay, I'll go work with him. You can come to the set if you want. Jai did a little birthday video for her 13th birthday saying hi to her. So she will be, that's next week that I will get to play that for her. I will be Mr. Super Dad. Yeah, that'll be big.
We fight for those that have died. We fight for those who will die tonight.
John Connor, we knew, was going to be one of the hardest roles to cast because he has to be charismatic. He has to be a guy who people who have no hope look at, and he is their hope. Not literally, but figuratively, he is their Messiah.
Jason Clarke plays our John Connor, and it's a character that's been deeply embedded in mythology from all the movies, but in our film, he has to make you fall in love with him in very short order, and then he has to scare the pants off you, and he was able to do both of those. And I'd just seen him in Planet of the Apes, but the film that made us all fall in love with him was probably Zero Dark 30, and we were very lucky to get him.
Jason Clarke is just one of those brilliant actors who can play simply any range.
We don't know what's going to happen next.
There's a big reveal scene in the parking structure, and Arnold actually came up to me at the end of the day and was like, David, Jason's really good. And I was like, yes, I know he is.
I do not have sufficient data to answer the question.
And that's the problem with machines, no imagination.
I mean, Jason was just so powerful with his speeches, so lofty, so strong inside. He never felt kind of intimidated by the Terminator or anything else, no matter what the challenges were. So I just thought he was terrific.
It's a very enigmatic but captured guy, a man who's a messiah and has a future to fulfill to save the world, but then he's trapped in that destiny and in that world that he's been born into, and then you still didn't really know that much about him, about how he truly felt about everything that was going underneath. And I think that was a big key point for the writers and for David in figuring out why they wanted to do this and what was going to be within the heart of it. And I think John lies at the heart of it, about the man and machine.
I feel like I'm just making a movie with a bunch of friends because we got to work with Byung-hun on G.I. Joe. When you think about Robert Patrick's performance, there was just something, it was a walking nightmare constantly coming at you. And the specifics of his physicality and the way he moves, the way he attacks, it's literally a nightmare that's never stopping.
It looks easy on the surface because you're not talking that much, and it's really difficult because you have to move in a way that is specific but yet different and creepy and scary all at the same time. And you also have to have a physicality. You have to have a real physicality for the role. And we knew from G.I. Joe that he had that in spades.
I literally remember thinking, well, it's only a couple of weeks. I have no idea if he'll want to do it. And we called him, and it turned out that it was actually one of the franchises that he loved and was kind of like the ultimate dream for him to be in Terminator. And so at the end, he's like, I would have done it for nothing. I just wanted to be in this movie.
This movie influenced me a lot since I was a teenager. When I was in high school, my friends called me Terminator as a nickname, because they thought I looked like him, and also I was the champion of arm wrestling, so they call me Terminator. So it's kind of a coincidence to participate in this project, so it was really great.
Primates evolve over millions of years. I evolve in seconds, and I am here.
I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, and Matt as an actor had all the qualities that we were really looking for. Literally, we wanted somebody who has a quality to him that actually feels slightly inhuman, because what he is playing is the personification of Skynet. He is 100% machine, but also an incredibly complicated artificial intelligence.
And we chased Matt Smith down. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I'd love to say, like, we asked him and he was like, sure, I'm gonna do it. No, we hunted him down to make him be in this movie.
It actually took a lot of conversations, as he will actually tell you. It was his mother who eventually said, you're an idiot if you don't do this, that actually got him to say yes, after he had said no about 3 times, and despite impassioned emails, and I promise you, you'll be happy you did this.
And action!
I think one of the funniest days on this set was the day it was announced that Matt Smith was going to be in this movie, because he coincidentally was here doing hair and makeup, and it felt like the internet went crazy. And now, having spent some time with Matt Smith, I can understand why.
One of the great draws for me, really, was to play someone that was villainous, because if I look at my career, that's been something that I've always wanted to do, and to get to do it in a franchise like this. I'm 31 now. Sort of growing up in the 80s, I think for anyone who's about my age, the first 2 movies were seminal films, really, and I think they were just really ahead of their time.
Oh yeah, did you see it? Did you? Hey, look, I got some frame grabs from the overpass. See?
JK I'd worked with a million years ago in Oz when he was a white supremacist, and he's just a joy. JK it's lucky and wonderful for us to be able to watch him win an Academy Award while we're finishing the movie, but it just confirms what we already knew.
You remember me? I was younger, more hair, less.
We like to feel that we spotted early what the rest of the world caught on to, which is the sort of stunning combination of the ability to be very light and comic, and also to have a lot of depth and understanding, and to have a kind of a performance. I mean, Whiplash is one of my favorite movies of last year. It's an incredible film.
Goddamn time-traveling robots covering up their goddamn tracks. Knew it. I honestly, was not looking to do this kind of movie right now, but, there was an inquiry, and I said, let me see the script, and I read the script, and I thought, this is really great. And then I saw, all the people that were involved, and Arnold was back, and the way they deal with Arnold being however much older he is than he was in the first one, and the new actors that they've brought in, and the script, it was just a slam dunk, so I jumped on board. I know what's going on here has to be really, really complicated.
We're here to stop the end of the world.
I can work with that.
Some of the best lines are lines that JK wrote on set himself. I mean, let's be honest. Some of the best stuff, the door line.
Yeah. That's the new breacher. Big blast, no shrapnel. Blows the door clean off. For people who can't do that themselves.
JK got the character. He understood how much fun the character could be, what the role was, why he was there, how important he was in the story. He immediately understood that both the weight and the lightness that the character could provide, and lent into it in the best way.
We were so lucky.
Yeah. No, we were thrilled to have him in the movie.
Actors have egos. We all do, you know. But this team, everybody's here wanting to make the best movie they can and contribute to it. And Arnold is, you know, the most gregarious, fun guy to just hang out with on the set, you know. And then they call action, and boom, he's the guardian, and he knocks it out of the park. And then you know, hang out and have a good time. And it's been a very relaxed, fun atmosphere.
I'd never been to New Orleans before, and I was surprised at the fact that I completely fell in love with it and, you know, want to move there. And there's something about that city that is just glorious. I mean, if you're going to be on location somewhere that's pretending not to be itself, it's great to be in a city that has a wonderful culture and spirit.
It's a great town because it's such a film town now, because there's so many movies that shoot there. So you actually want to work hard to make sure that you have a distinctive look. And found, you know, a combination of incredible sets that Neil built on our stages, that many of which were out at the NASA site, and then practical locations in and around town.
Especially 1980s downtown Los Angeles, downtown New Orleans is kind of stuck in another time period, so it actually looks more like downtown LA than downtown LA does today. So that worked really well. There wasn't a ton of location work. There was a lot of outdoor work, but it was more like parking lots. We shot the Future War very early in the shooting schedule, and we went right into 6 weeks of nights, and that was a big part of it. And we shot in this giant part of the Port of Orleans, and the set was about a quarter mile long. So we had an enormous moon box suspended by a crane, enormous set pieces that Neil designed sections of the wall of the Future War camp.
There were glimpses of the Future War in Cameron's first two movies, and he was such an efficient storyteller that he did very little there. He also, I think, wasn't trying to spend money where he didn't have to spend money. I was excited that we got to develop some of the things he'd already created. There's, you know, wonderful weapons like the hunter killers and the spider tanks that are all very cool, and we got to do our versions of those. We got to actually spend time, you know, with some gritty, you know, full production of what it would be like to be in that kind of battle.
There was so much pyro and atmosphere and extras and endoskeletons. We flipped a goer truck in that scenario. That was actually the second unit that actually flipped the truck. It was a big handoff between the first unit and the second unit, but all the things with the actors leading into and coming out of each stunt or event was shot by the first unit. It was a real close collaboration between the art department and the lighting department and everybody else, you know, stunts, effects, pyro, actors, directors.
It's basically D-Day, and you see literally the Resistance throw everything that they've got at Skynet, and it is a massive battle, and it is the biggest Future War sequence that has been in a Terminator movie to date.
The Griffith Park sequence was, you know, tremendously involved in recreating actual Griffith Park in New Orleans in a parking lot. It's surreal to see it all put together.
With Arnold, I think there was a turning point for everybody. You know, for me, I knew he had to be in the movie, but I'd never met him. And I remember having breakfast with him the first time and having no idea what kind of person I was going to be meeting. You know, he's a movie star forever. He's an action star forever. He was governor. I have no idea what kind of human being that's going to lead to. And the first line I crossed was realizing that he's wonderful to be around. He's open and sensible and funny, and, you know, not just my first breakfast with him, but then with the crew, seeing him laugh, and he always eats lunch with the crew. He's completely unpretentious that way.
One of my favorite moments was when we were shooting the Griffith Park Observatory the very first night, and it's Arnold's reveal in the movie where he pulls his hoodie back and he says, "I've been waiting for you."
Ready and action!
I've been waiting.
And you actually got to look around at the entire crew. The age range is early 20s to 60, and everybody's just grinning ear to ear because the Terminator is on set.
Take and action!
I've been waiting for you.
It's the thing he was born to do. And he's phenomenal at it. And it was like all of a sudden you were stepping back in time and remembering where you were, both for T1 and T2, every time Arnold walked on screen.
I've been waiting for you. In this movie, you see this same scene as the 1984 scene, except the scene will unfold in a different way. Except now, because of the visual effects that you can do, and because of the technology that's available, you can tell that story even better.
What was really challenging about it is the Guardian in 1984 is, 20 plus years younger than Arnold himself. We actually scoured the earth to find basically a bodybuilder by the name of Brett. He was the only person who had that 50-inch back that Arnold actually had, but his biceps and quads, everything else was slightly lesser than. And then obviously that served as really our proxy. So when you shoot the fight sequence, Arnold and basically everyone has something to interact with.
It's wonderful. To me, it reminds me sort of the encounter between the T-1000 and Arnold in T2, where they first face each other, and there's something just fun about watching these two things that have the massive Mack trucks going at each other. So it's a human scale fight with punches being thrown, but each one is, like a pile driver. The fight tilts in one direction because, let's face it, our Guardian's been around a little longer and he's starting to show some wear and tear. But yeah, this sort of meeting between two perfectly matched titans is exciting.
One of the things we said as we were developing the script is we'd love for people to think, up until they get to the moment that Kyle Reese returns to 1984, oh my God, are they really just remaking the first movie but with a bigger Future War sequence? Why would they do that? And the reality is we're not. But we are pretty meticulously recreating that initial 1984 sequence. Again, it's not a shot-for-shot remake, but there's definitely a lot of homage.
3, 2, 1, go!
Come with me if you want to live.
Sometimes we felt like, oh God, we have to shoot this way because look, that's how it was done before. We had to find the right balance of how much we were recreating them exactly and how much we were sort of doing our versions of them. But it was fun to do that, and it's been fun to watch audiences respond to them, especially the fans that really get them. And occasionally we go shot by shot, to the original movie, and feeling the fans react to that has been really fun. Because the broader audience may not understand exactly what the reference is, but the fans, there's a wonderful sort of laugh that you feel in the audience.
Set and action!
3, 2, 1, go!
Come with me if you want to live. Now, soldier.
And we cut.
Cut.
The power plant was a big set piece, which was actually a real, location, an abandoned power plant.
We scouted a bunch of different actual locations here in New Orleans, and that particular building has so much richness and character and age. Just a great sort of old abandoned feeling to it. It also needed to be able to hold the armored truck, be big enough for an interesting fight.
How do you even describe that building? It sort of has a roof.
Yes, it was basically, it was an abandoned power station. and it was kind of falling apart, and we actually had a horrible day where we got rained out, and there was literally a monsoon that came in, and we were like, well, we're inside, we're gonna be fine. And there were holes in the roof.
No.
And so the whole thing
There's about 3 feet of water.
Yeah. And then after that, we're like, well, great, we'll go to the cover set, but all the trucks had sunk into the mud at the power station. So literally me and Dana were sitting in our trailers till about 3 a.m. So we were finally like, this is not going to stop. We are not going to shoot today.
And for the record, it was forecast for scattered showers.
Yes.
Getting Byung-hun Lee to play the T-1000 was fantastic. He took it so seriously. He was so focused on getting the choreography right for this character. He was correcting me occasionally when I would suggest something, and he would say, I don't think he would do that, because he'd really thought about it. And I think he's achieved some of the things that Robert Patrick achieved in the in T2, which sort of set the bar for this kind of creature. He's physically beautiful, he's graceful, he's elegant, but he's lethal and scary.
Sound speed. Hey, Mark.
I watched T2 again. Actually, I watched it a lot. And it was still so fun. And I try to be like him.
Sarah, go.
Action-wise, it was so different because I've never acted not as a human, as a machine. I couldn't blink, I couldn't breathe.
Action.
It was just such a perfect fit. He was like, performed just like a machine. Is he really a machine, or what's going on here? Because he was so good and so precise. He would do 10 takes, and he would hit not a millimeter away from the mark every single time. I talked to him at one point, and he told me that he believes, like I do, in reps, because he comes from the athletic background, and so it's all about reps, doing it over and over in order to be precise.
As soon as I got here, production introduced me the movement coach. I thought I was gonna meet, some action coordinator or a stunt guy, but Nito, he's basically a dancer. So I was a little surprised by that, but he was really good for my movements, and he helped me a lot.
Neil built enormous set pieces. The tunnels, the interior was all beautiful sets built by Neil and conceived by Neil, as if there were tunnels underneath this power plant.
Here we go. And action.
So you set a trap.
Had to. Can't leave any future tech behind when we go.
Go. Go where?
The TDD that is in 1984.
I wanted it to feel like, that we would believe we were underneath that building. I think that the board form concrete is really a beautiful job. The scenic work in here is really nice, feels great, feels dank, feels, underground. I think the electromagnets are pretty great on this. The copper tubing and the sort of mismatched sizes of it, and how it feels organized in a disorganized kind of way. I think that's what we were trying to do with the Guardian. All of the computer equipment is early 80s Apple and computers. Well, one of the rules of time travel is that you have to be in a cold room. They're really refrigeration units, and we got them from a bunch of various junkyards, and there they are. Some are radiators, actually.
We can't be wearing anything?
Yeah, I know how time travel works. Sarah.
The number of arms and how they work, the number of rings and how they spin, the way that a person is lifted into the time machine, the idea that the room is cold. It applies to the other sets. So the frosted quality of the edges of things, and the idea that we're refrigerating the space.
In regards to really being a film-friendly town in New Orleans, something we could never do anywhere but New Orleans is the freeway arrival sequence. We literally kind of had this dream of, well, let's shut down the largest overpass in New Orleans and shoot on it for 3 nights. You know, you couldn't do that in New York or San Francisco, and New Orleans was like, absolutely. We'll shut the whole thing down for you. It'll be fine. You can bring your crews on there. And we kind of looked at each other and we're like, they're really gonna let us do this?
3 days.
This is great. And so, so again, that sequence has that scale to it because New Orleans allowed us to, you know, shoot that sequence there that literally no place else in the world would let us do it.
All right, let's go. I'll get us out of here. Stay close.
Wait. We all know they can shapeshift. If you are John, prove it.
Sarah! No, she's right, Kyle. She is.
Jason Clarke playing John Connor is an incredibly dynamic actor, and that's what this particular version of John Connor really requires.
Jason is just so intense in his portrayal of John that it's much less about gunfire than it is about the physicality of what he created, because it's not quite human.
And it's sort of the power of charisma, and you see that in the beginning. The charismatic leader who you know, what happens if you take a Messiah and you push him, you know, you let him fall from grace in a way that inflicts him to be on the other side? What is that point of view?
Ready, and action. John!
Well, I always look at a character from, you know, what he's doing is right in his own mind. And you know, I think John's agenda and his decision about what's happened to him is very justified. You know, in terms of he believes that the only way to break this cycle is to not just side with the machine, but become part of the machine.
Let him go. Right now.
He truly believes that this is the way ahead, and he would like to take Sarah and Kyle with him, you know? But we all have to make our own choices.
See, I'm not machine. I'm not man. I'm more.
What do you want from us?
I'm offering us a future together. As a family. No more widows and orphans.
What I love about Jason's performance is he didn't really go from being the all good guy to the all bad guy. He sort of kept a continuity there, where even as the villain, he still thinks he's doing the right thing. So John Connor dramatically goes from being our greatest hope to being our greatest threat. Inverting him so that he becomes the biggest threat is just dramatically fun. And it also feels like it's within Cameron's mythology, because one of the most brilliant things he did was that big inversion of taking the villain from the first film and making him the hero of the second film.
And we cut. Great. One more.
We've had a lot of fun as a little troupe. Jason, it's funny. I mean, the demands of this shoot schedule have led to a situation where 2 Aussie guys in the same cast haven't even had a beer together yet, which I'm pretty embarrassed about, to be honest. But it's the truth, and I think that's just testament to how hard everyone's been working. It's been nuts, but it had to be in order to, you know, get this thing done and done right.
There are things that New Orleans could really deliver for us, and the one place we went on location to actually nail it was San Francisco, because our film ends there, and we had to get some of the iconography that you only get there to go to the Golden Gate and go to the bunkers up in the hills above the Golden Gate. Oh, I love it. It's the way to do it. It becomes realer for everybody, and, you know, one less degree of pretend.
San Francisco has such a unique look and a unique quality of light.
One, drop.
And it was so helpful to actually be able to capture some of that. Gives scope and scale, so it really ties in what we did in New Orleans.
Yeah, how much would it cost to shift all the buses and motorcycles down to that end?
Because we were shooting in New Orleans in the summer. By the time we left, it was a little warm, to say the least. And then we take our entire crew to San Francisco, and we're all wearing sweaters and jackets because we're freezing.
Bang!
Fog and trying to shoot on the bridge.
We really wanted beautiful, pristine shots of the Golden Gate Bridge, and we got a lot of standing around looking at clouds, going, wait, it's moving, turn the cameras on.
Yeah. We actually went back up there later to get the crystal clear
To get the
shots.
beautiful, beautiful shots
Yeah.
that you see in the movie. But hey, it's real and it gives atmosphere to the film.
Hi, you're powering.
So it starts after my recognizing.
Alan Taylor is oh, he's just so good. He's just so good.
Alan is, I don't understand how anybody, could keep all these balls in the air and have a clue about what's going on. And his sense of the big picture is so complete and so thorough.
He's a very smart man, and he knows story, and he knows actors, and he comes from some of the greatest TV ever done, and The Sopranos, and then on Game of Thrones, and Mad Men. He's been a pleasure to work with, like really.
The great thing about Alan Taylor is he doesn't get intimidated. A lot of times when I have a new director in the film, they don't know how far should they go with correcting me, or what should they say, and how should they say it. And a lot of times directors would then go to my team or to my assistant, to someone and says, can you tell him, to tone it down a little bit or to bring it up a little bit, but not Alan Taylor, because he and I, we talked about it beforehand, and we said, look, if there's a scene that you don't like, then just tell me this doesn't work.
Ideally, on action, you start to walk. This time, it felt like you hesitated and you came in fast.
Oh, I see.
So I think coming not so hard. It's just basically you're walking forward.
Exactly. Okay, good. Yeah. From day one on, he was never intimidated, and he came right to me, and he always very gentlemanlike, may I remind you. He will get the point across very clear that we can do better than that. And then he put more energy in it, and he really is there to pump you up. It's a little bit almost like a shrink, that comes in there. Says, now, I remember that here yesterday we did this. Today we're doing it in a different way. And just think about when you do this scene in Conan, and then you crush the enemy. Just give me that drive.
Ready and go!
We are filming at NASA, where you need about a zillion passes to get in. The sets are as big as the moon.
What about that? Is it dangerous?
Polyalloy requires programming to take permanent form. Without the CPU, it is harmless.
The whole concept of world building and visual design was very much a close collaboration between myself and Neil, the production designer. There's a lot of discussion about how we would incorporate lighting into his sets, because there's so much technology and light.
Matt Smith plays the T-5000, which is something that we've never seen, which is very much the personification of Skynet walking the Earth.
For me, what's been exciting about this challenge is that it's the idea and the notion that I get to play someone that's a bad guy. And that's something that I've been really interested in. And we hope as the T-5000 develops that he's going to be, pure supervillain.
Why can't you just accept it? Because we're human.
The final battle sequence in the third act is epic. Good versus evil, and technology versus man, and a huge amount was shot by the second unit. People often ask me when I work on a movie like this, oh, was it all blue screen? Was it just,
Action.
And it's not all blue screen. I mean, there's, a huge amount of blue screen that we do, but there's also a tremendous amount of in-camera photography.
Action.
Well, if you're going to throw it down with anyone on the screen, you want it to be Schwarzenegger. I love that. I mean, he's a lot of fun, you know.
Close up of him again.
Me again.
And he's still in shape. I mean, he's a strong dude. And he knows what he's doing. I mean, he's got so much experience with fights and on film. Well, you only get to do this kind of action on a big budget film. I mean, lots of, you know, suspension, ropes, pulleys and all that, but not just in a base. I mean, some of them have very complicated setups and ups and moves, and you know, just use them just for a big wild swing, but just a little bit here and pull there.
And action!
It's just that great thing of trying to, you know, so that each adds to the other, that it becomes, but still based in a reality, in a, you know, in a world that we've created that exists, and we stick to the rules. And Arnold really talked a lot about the fighting and how Terminators fight, and how, you know, that him and Jim, you know, particularly in the ones that they did together, it was a real big thing about the style of the way it operates. And you know, I know we've all worked very hard to try and, you know, be true to that, and also keep that imagination and that thread going.
When you see the final product, no matter how much you've thought about what it's going to look like in the end, it's always, you know, a jaw dropper to see a set that's been fully extended and executed, and all the different CG elements that are in there. You're just like, wow.
It's some of the most enjoyable action I've ever done. You know, it's creative and it's fun. Coming down off the ledge, jumping up and down on a big pile drive. So it's been cool, you know.
Terminator Genisys was very challenging from a visual effects point of view.
One of the things that, as a huge fan of Terminator, and one of the things we knew that the fans really wanted, I mean, if you read any online commentaries, that people want to see the fully rendered future war. And so obviously our movie opens up on the day that John Connor leads humanity basically to success against the machines. And it is the biggest future war sequence that has been in a Terminator movie to date.
The future war, the war camp war, was for most parts really sort of initiated with like a lot of concept work. We received basically these sort of plates from the principal photography, and it sort of, you know, came with the premises of extending it and making it sort of this post-apocalyptic environment. And the more we got involved in the sequence and the more we started working on it, the more it became clear that the premises was like, you know, the more the better, where, you know, almost nothing could fit into the image anymore, you know? So it was about like making it as epic and as big as humanly possible.
The HKs and the T-800s are obviously canon from the first two movies. They were kind of updated and redesigned by our incredible visual effects team, which is really led by, you know, Yannick Surs and Sherry Hansen. They were the spider tanks, which were a new design, obviously, that Jim had actually developed very, very early on, but they were never actually able to bring them to fruition. It was really fun getting to actually sit, you know, obviously in post for many, many months with the VFX team, obviously helping to develop and create these shots.
Yannick Surs, he's our visual effects supervisor, and he's probably got more experience at these movies than any of us, so we're all a little bit intimidated by him. He sort of keeps us on our toes. Frequently he pushes back when we suggest things, and he's found solutions for things that we didn't find, and just the bar he sets for the finished visual effects is very, very high.
What excited me about this Terminator movie was probably the prospect of the recreation of the young Arnold character.
You know, Yannick Surs, who's our visual effects supervisor, and Sherry Hansen, who's our visual effects producer. Probably the first thing they ever said to us after they read the script was, the John Connor design is going to be challenging, but the young Arnold in Griffith Park, You're not going to get that until you rip it out of our hands the very last minute when this movie is locked.
It is already difficult enough, I guess, to create a human being digitally. It becomes even more difficult if that human being is like such an iconic figure as Arnold Schwarzenegger. Right from the start, we couldn't leave any stone unturned. So our whole process, how we did digital characters in the past, had to be evaluated and changed or invent new technologies wherever possible to just raise the bar. The observatory sequence or the Griffith Park sequence that we worked on sort of, splits almost into two portions, into two halves. Like the first portion being basically the recreation of the original movie scenes, of the arrival from the young Arnold, and we're basically introducing that young Arnold character traveling back in time. Then the second half and the second part is basically where the storyline deviates a little bit, and that's when young Arnold is basically finding himself being exposed to an opponent, which is basically himself, just at an older age. And that's from there on effectively where we have this sort of face-off between young versus old.
I've been waiting for you.
First, we built the set in New Orleans and shot it practically. Arnold obviously plays the Guardian, but there's the entire process of youthifying, obviously, Guardian to turn our 67-year-old Arnold Schwarzenegger into a 50-year-old version of himself. Then we actually scoured the earth to find basically a bodybuilder by the name of Brett, who basically is the only human being on the planet who is almost as big as Arnold was when he was Mr. Universe.
It was all sort of choreographed with a stunt double. You sort of acted that out. But what happened throughout the process is we basically had to discard the plate almost entirely. We almost had to say, okay, the lens isn't quite right to be, correct enough and close enough to the original footage, and the framing isn't quite right. So we decided basically to go almost full CG.
The first process is you build the model, which gets you very, very close to where you want to be. But then at the end of it, you get into this uncanny area when you're looking at it to where you're 5% off, things will look right, but it's that glint behind the eyes, it's the way the light interacts with your skin, all of this incredibly finite detail that separates from something that feels actually alive and living and something that just feels dead.
Well, the sculpt of his cheekbones feel a little bit better. His face feels just a little bit wider. And I think if we take that down, and so we really feel like, I think it'll accentuate the cheek line more, make the jawline more defined, which is so Arnold.
The review process with our clients started off, at the beginning mostly with us working together with Yannick, basically. And we sort of had regular review sessions with him 2 or 3 times a week where we went through the processes and the steps. With a character like the young Arnold, it was something that took pretty much our entire time from the start of the show when we first started working on this project all the way to the end, where we literally continuously built and refined this young Arnold character. Then further down the line, when it came more to the shot production, we started being more and more exposed to the filmmakers like Alan Taylor, on David Ellison, and Dana Goldberg. It was a highly creative process, but also a very time-consuming process for us to study and research like what Arnold it was like back then, effectively.
Nice night for a walk.
Wash day tomorrow. Nothing clean, right?
Nothing clean. Right.
Terminator movies have a history of phenomenal practical effects and groundbreaking visual effects.
Cameron, when he makes movies, always pushes the envelope on what's possible, and on T2, he did it in a big way that really had a sort of pride of place in the movie. The T-1000 technology seemed impossible at the time. I remember seeing it, and I think we all thought, how do you do that?
Well, Terminator 2 was made at really the dawn of the CG character age. We made a whole movie in 1990, it was released in the summer of '91, that had a fluid metallic character as the bad guy. So we were betting the farm on this new technique, and it kind of just blew up. 2.5 decades later, it's an extremely mature art form.
Well, the T-1000, we wanted to explore about how we could take it any further with the breaking down and the transformation of the form. We did a whole bunch of different fancy fluid sims and all the rest of it, but they actually, if anything, the more complex we got, the further away we got from the original material. Weirdly enough, we went completely full circle back to almost doing it in a similar fashion to how they did it on T2, to actually obtain that similar sort of look. So, for example, the shot where he comes through the window in the police car is all just a series of sculpts. Equally, when he melts in the acid bath, that is all pure fluid sim.
We had some fantastic performance from Byung-hun for the T-1000.
And we really wanted to get the essence of his acting across, even though parts of him were going to be fully CG. To tackle that, we really developed a pipeline that allowed us to work iteratively in effects very quickly to dial in more of his performance or dial it more towards effects for dramatic effect, specifically in the acid bath sequence of him being eroded away.
It's very hard to surprise people. So, you know, the challenge on this film was, yes, we're going to see Terminator endoskeletons, and we're going to see a lot of other CG effects that you might not think too much about. But in the center of it all is this new bad guy. And he can't just be the same simple liquid metal dude that we saw, you know, a couple decades ago. So they've gone to a much higher level.
I think we kept pushing ourselves to try and find a vocabulary for that villain and the imagery that would be almost as challenging. Cameron's T-1000 was a beautiful creature that was absolutely simple, and we have a beautiful creature that is absolutely complex, and so we're sort of embracing complexity in our T-3000.
D-Nick did an unbelievable job on this movie and really delivered in every single way with the design of John Connor, who is a man-machine hybrid whose body has actually been infected on a cellular level.
You know, you have to think about the lineage behind it all. You know, from the T-800, the T-1000, what would be the next design, being as it's Skynet that's designed this thing. So he is, at the start, they're just replicating him. So it's a nanosite humanoid thing.
That hurt.
We start to develop this from last year, basically from how he looks like, from the concept to modeling, the shader. We went through a lot of development until roughly last December. It's kind of confirmed.
The fact that Cyberdyne had come up with a way of replacing and improving on the human body with these intelligent particles. He was never in a stable state. He was constantly being reinvented, and the analogy we came up with was as if he was being 3D printed.
My mission was to literally build this like superhuman, but with all this design in it. We started like some kind of two branch of it, like one be like fully nanotech kind of organic fields, and one would be like more close to T-800's Skynet fields. Ultimately, this would be like the containers and the guides for all the nanomachine effects, which would be on top of this.
Our job kind of started once the design was sort of settled. So our job was to actually make him look like he's made out of a million little nanobots or something, some sort of nanotech that's kind of making up the whole idea of John Connor. Traditional animation, you would just animate each point, but it gets really tricky for like a million nanopoints. So we came up with algorithms and we invented all those really advanced techniques, but once it was all set up, it was the machine doing the work for us, because you're never going to get away with like animating millions of points for like 1,000 shots.
Crank it!
They can't kill John Connor, you know, so then they need to control John Connor. So the T-2000 in that sense is not a, you know, it's not a straight robot. It is partly John. It's very important to us that you saw that Jason's features, his performance was still there. What we thought was cool with this is he controls his own magnetic fields, right? That's how his form is actually generated. The reason that we have the MRI scene is to actually see that he is susceptible to something. So yes, he's slowly being pulled apart in layers on that particular shot, and you can see the various different organs in there. So that's obviously after that he's designed a little bit more all the way through the film to the point where you see him in the fight at the end. He's a much more streamlined and ripped version of that.
There's that technique, it's called phasing. It's when the T-3000 goes through the Terminator and shreds his cloth and all his skin. Obviously, that's something we've never seen before, and it's really hard to imagine because it's such an advance and it's really complicated and complex to describe. Obviously, we need to show like different versions and different ideas and go through like a lot of iterations.
The phasing was one kind of trademark moment within that sequence where he's supposed to kind of separate and then reform around Guardian, go through him, create a lot of damage. And basically, Jason Clarke turns into his T-3000 form.
Obviously, you need to get the animation right. It needs to look like two guys are actually fighting. So we had like this really advanced motion capture technology, which kind of fed into the animation, which then fed into the nanofication process. And that bring all that pretty much from CG onto the screen to like a photoreal composite. That was a tough challenge.
That is one of the last shots that they finished on the movie, and in that shot, John Connor, T-1000 is entirely CG. Arnold Schwarzenegger in Guardian is entirely CG, and the environment that they take place in is 90% CG. And literally it looks photorealistic and perfect, and the work they have done on this movie is truly, truly groundbreaking.
What are you?
I'm Skynet.
The T5000 was, it went through a few looks before we finally settled on what you will see in the finished film. But I guess the general concept behind it was a projection, but it was obviously a projection that eventually grew and became a physical object. So in this case, we went by the whole belief that this laser would ionize the air and actually create particles from elements that were already there, but they were just almost solidifying them. So as he grew, he became more and more of a physical creature.
So it starts as a child, it grows all the way through to be Matt Smith and the T5000. So we wanted that as some kind of design ethic to show evolution, complexity, and rapid growth. There was a lot of ideas about what the T5000 should be. I mean, what is pure Skynet?
Phosphorescence is really the element that we looked at because we wanted kind of the air particles to ionize on, and not the hologram you've seen 1,000 times, but for it to be something different with technology you hadn't seen before. You know, if you go night diving, you shut off all your lights and you wave your hand underwater, you'll get these kind of green phosphorescence that will glow and kind of ionize on, ionize off. And that was really the concept behind how to create really the T5000 in Matt Smith.
In addition to sort of all of the beauty aspects of what they were creating, they also then had to really fit into a very logical box. How much of the face do we want to see? How much of the body do we really want to see? We needed him to be immediately recognizable. When Jai looks at him and says, that's the thing that attacked John.
That's the thing that attacked John.
I didn't attack John. I saved him.
We needed to really understand that he had the ability to do that.
The feedback that I've been given or that I've received so far from the filmmakers or from Yannick or Sherry, it's been positive. And I think everyone on the production side was very happy, and I hope that they're all very pleased with the results.
Hopefully the guys in the audience look at the T1000, the T3000 and still see that it harks back to the original material, you know, albeit with a slightly different twist. You know, it's a lot of work. A huge amount of people have worked a lot of time on this, and hopefully it shows.
Yay! All right, that's all, folks. Thank you very much for your time.